Hey engineers. So what we have this week is what I hope is going to be an interesting assignment for you guys. We're continuing to look at our spaceship, which has to be self-sustaining because it's going to be flying for 5 years to the nearest star. And what I want to look at here is the connections between the different systems on board. And the way that we're going to analyze this is with the setup that the astronauts are getting ready for a Thanksgiving dinner. So we've got to make sure that all of our sections are ready to supply everything that we need for that. Now we're going to keep this Thanksgiving dinner relatively simple. We're only going to have 3 parts to the meal. So the astronauts want to have mashed potatoes, they want to have corn on the cob, and they want to have turkey, of course. And obviously, they want to have some water to go along with that. So we're going to see what we need to do with our livestock, with our greenhouse, and with our waste processor to make sure that that happens. So we've got another Google drawing here, and I want to walk you guys through how we're going to show these connections and then what I'm actually expecting from you guys, okay? So let's go ahead and jump right in. So in Google Drawings, we've got a couple of tools, but the one that I'm going to focus on right now is called the Scribble tool. This lets us draw lines that kind of go wherever we want them to, and that's going to help us out a lot here. So I want to show the connections, basically where the outputs from one system become the inputs for another system. So for example, the turkey is an output from the livestock section. So the turkeys that are being raised there are going to be used for a meal. So the output from the livestock section gets transferred over to the dinner section. And once you've drawn your line, you can go up here and we can add an arrow to it to show turkeys coming from over here and coming up to here. Now, another animal output is going to be butter, because butter is made from milk, and I guess this spaceship's big enough to have cows on board. So we're going to move the butter, or show the connection between that, and I like to put butter in mashed potatoes. So those are our 2 connections there. But it takes more than just butter to make mashed potatoes. We also need the potatoes themselves. So let's go ahead and go over to the greenhouse and let's show how the outputs from the greenhouse connect to this dinner. So we've got mashed potatoes there, and we're also going to have corn here. So that's almost all the way there, but the last thing that we're missing is that the astronauts need to have something to drink. So we also need to send water from the waste processor, which processes the waste on board and turns it into clean drinking water. Alright, so those are our connections so far. And that's actually going to take care of the dinner, which is great. But there's a problem. We need to make sure that all of these systems have their needs taken care of so that they can produce these things. So what you guys are going to do is you're going to take a look at the greenhouse, and we're going to make sure that all of the needs in the greenhouse are taken care of. So that means that every input is going to come from somewhere, except for light. Light just comes from the electricity on board. But every input comes from somewhere, and every output goes somewhere. So that means that we need to figure out where the water's coming from, where the fertilizer's coming from, where the CO2 is coming from, and where the compost is coming from. And on the flip side, we have to figure out where everything is going here. So you may not know this, but the green part of a potato plant is actually poisonous. So the people can't eat it and the animals can't eat it. On the other hand, the stalks that corn grows on, those are edible, not to people, but to animals. And then we have to deal with the dirty water that kind of pools at the bottom of planters, and figure out where the oxygen is going that the plants produce. So I want you guys to make sure that every single one of these has an arrow coming off of it. As you go, this is quickly going to become complicated. So I want you guys to be careful. Draw your lines so they don't cross over too much. And I also want to emphasize, you don't have to do this for the livestock pens or the waste processor. If we did all of that, this map would get way too complicated. So just do the greenhouse. But again, everything except for light should have a line or an arrow coming off of it, just like this. I'm going to ask you guys to do one more thing here. When you draw your lines, I want you guys to do your best to change the color. I want the lines that you draw to be green, and you can leave the lines that are already there in black. That way I can see what you guys added. So I'm just going to show that with one more line here. You can have this one for free. So the water is going from the cleaned output up to the greenhouse. And I'm going to go ahead and change the color right there. So that's what all of your lines should look like. Now that does mean that some of these are going to have to come from other sections, but you should be able to figure that part out. Alright, and so what this really represents here is the way that in this closed system, everything needs to rely on everything else. So everything has to be recycled, everything has to, every output needs to be the input to something else. And you see, it takes a lot of work to maintain this whole little system and keep produce enough food for everybody on board. Alright, engineers, so good luck with this one. Feel free to email me if you have any questions. And don't forget, there's also a couple of questions up here that you're going to need to answer. Make sure that you answer them in your own words. These are pretty simple, kind of just opinion questions. So just be honest, answer in a complete sentence. And if I don't see you in office hours, have a good Thanksgiving break. I hope you enjoy your time off and you're looking forward to coming back at the other side of it.